Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer. And opening weekend for Jurassic World Rebirth has come and gone, and it is already a runaway hit, just like I figured it would be. I mean, I'm not really that surprised. I kind of figured that would be the case because the Jurassic movies thus far have all been successful, even if they haven't been all that well received. And even in this day and age where the franchises that were too big to fail have been failing left and right before our very eyes, Jurassic has survived. Now, of course, I've been thinking about it, and part of the reason why other franchises that were once considered too big to fail are failing is because, a lot of them have used up all of the goodwill they used to have. It's been happening with Star Wars, it's been happening with Marvel. It happened very quickly with DC, although who knows if it can be rebuilt. We'll be finding out in a couple days from this video's posting. And we've seen it with Mission Impossible, a whole bunch of franchises, really. And I know that with me saying that, some of you might think, well, wait a minute. Are you telling me that the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World series didn't burn up its goodwill? I mean, there isn't a single movie that people like other than the first one. So how can you be saying that it hasn't burned up its goodwill? Well, I do think that the Jurassic series burned up its goodwill, mind you. Thing is, though, that happened a very long time ago. As in, the majority of that goodwill was destroyed in 1997 when The Lost World came along and it was not Jurassic Park. And then the rest of it evaporated in 2001 with the third movie. And since then, the fandom has grown, it's introduced new generations. We've had time to go through all the stages of grief and everything. And far be it from me to put words in people's mouths, but if I had to guess, I think the Jurassic fandom is kind of in a state of mind at this point where we're just thinking, well, we already know the movies are going to be bad, right? When you start at the top of the mountain, like we did with Jurassic Park, there's really no direction to go other than down. So, as long as we have that in mind, and we know that each of the other movies have had at least something interesting in them, even if overall they weren't the best, and what the heck, we'll give the new one a shot whenever it comes around. It's not like we're inundated with 5 of them a year every year like we are with superhero movies. So maybe the next one will have something interesting. And that's just the fandom's mindset. That doesn't even take into account the general audience that just thinks, oh, cool, dinosaurs. We barely get dinosaur movies anymore. Let's go see it to break up the monotony. And hey, my kid loves dinosaurs too, so bring them along. You know, in that case, even though Jurassic doesn't have much goodwill to it, you could say, especially among the fandom, it almost doesn't matter. We just kind of expect it. Unless the series gets rebooted and somehow gets even closer to adapting the original novel on its first go, I don't think that's going to change. And even if we do get a more accurate adaptation, I don't necessarily know if that would work per se. But that's a whole other discussion. What I really wanted to talk about here, though, is that as I've been thinking about it, I believe that Jurassic World Rebirth had a bit of a missed opportunity to it. And I wanted to present a sort of alternative way that it could have gone that might have made the human side of the plot a little bit more interesting. Now, don't take this to mean that I'm somehow invalidating your opinion if you do like Rebirth. I mean, I just didn't feel anything. My feelings on the movie have sort of come full circle. When I saw the first trailer, I felt nothing. Now that I've seen the movie, I feel nothing once again. So I think I really am true neutral when it comes to this thing. And I can understand why people would like it. There are various things that I can see drawing people in. But I do still think that maybe once you hear this, it might also get you thinking about some alternate ways the movie could have gone. And I don't know if this was ever discussed or if it was a possible idea that was dropped for whatever reason, but just looking at some of the things the movie put forward, I had this come into my mind. So This specifically involves the character of Henry Loomis, the paleontologist who comes along to help identify the dinosaurs. Or really, no, he's not really needed in that regard. It's more like he comes along because he just really wants to see dinosaurs. I can't actually think of a true reason why he needed to be there other than that. But either way, he's along for the ride. And like he's going to miss a chance to go where the dinosaurs are, right? But there are a couple of elements throughout the early portions of the movie that sort of leave me wondering. Like when we first meet him in the museum and he's laying out the mission for collecting the samples. I mean, I've always felt the way they were talking about it had sort of an almost mystical element to it. Like not just a mystical element, but actually an elemental element in a way, because they have to collect samples from a sauropod, a marine reptile, and a pterosaur. That's the three spheres of the world, right? Land, sea, and air. And that always stuck out to me. That's what they were doing. And he was the one who proposed that, if I remember the plot correctly. So that's already kind of curious, because that's not really scientific in a way. Like, why would you have to get one from each of those specific things? Unless, of course, there was some more mystical element that he was hinting at. Not that I'm saying mysticism should be introduced, mind you. I am building to something with this. So then, of course, once we're on the boat and we're traveling to the island, and we're learning that for some reason, all these mercenaries they hired didn't bring guns with them. But one of them brought along a type of gun that doesn't shoot bullets. It shoots darts full of neurotoxin that will essentially kill the dinosaurs anyway. And there's that conversation where the cannon fodder dude, because he's the first one to die, we all know at the moment we see him, he looks at Loomis and says, "Oh, is this the part where you tell me it's bad to kill a dinosaur?" And Loomis responds with, "No, this is where I tell you it's a sin to kill a dinosaur." He just goes full Harper Lee in that moment, which again, kind of an odd thing for a scientist to say, right? Because the word sin but by its very nature, implies transgression against the divine. So a scientist saying that, like, we don't necessarily learn what his beliefs are, but we have to assume that as a scientist, he wouldn't necessarily be into anything religious or mystical or something. Not that it's impossible, but again, just an assumption I'm making. Although, again, we have that weird element of him like being drawn to land, sea, and air when it comes to collecting samples. And then about midway through, once they're stranded on the island, he has that speech where he disagrees with our resident evil capitalist villain, Martin, about the nature of intelligence. And he goes off saying human intelligence in general really is overrated as a survival mechanism, and the dinosaurs were around for way longer than mankind was, and they were all stupid. Look how long they lasted. Meanwhile, humanity's been around for a shorter space of time, and we've already got the means to destroy ourselves. We're not going to make it. Very misanthropic speech, if you ask me. And again, not the sort of thing that you would expect to hear coming from the guy when he's on a mission to collect these samples to make heart medication that's supposed to save lives. Why would he even be along for that if he's such a nihilist? It just doesn't seem to add up. Plus, his statement about intelligence completely contradicts the rest of the Jurassic series. Totally and utterly. Because think about it for a moment. Who are the baddest dinosaurs in all of the Jurassic series? Who are considered the worst of the worst? The raptors, right? You know, there's the possible exception of Dominion because they didn't really factor in that much. I can't really think of any reason why they kidnapped Blue's baby when it was just the human clone they wanted. But in every other movie, the raptors are the most dangerous dinosaurs, more dangerous than the T-Rex, more dangerous than the mosasaurs, more dangerous than the Spinosaurus. They are the worst. Even in the first movie, everyone's filled with awe and wonder as they're learning all the different kinds of dinosaurs that were brought back, until the word raptor, until the word velociraptor is brought up. Then suddenly, minor notes in the music with very low resonating tones. The characters are all full of dread. You brought back raptors? Are you crazy? Why are the raptors considered so bad? Because they are intelligent, and eerily so. The third movie actually was bringing it in the direction of of implying the raptors were eerily almost human level intelligent, to the point where if they hadn't gone extinct, they'd be the dominant species. So again, to have the speech in Rebirth that says intelligence isn't all what that it's cracked up to be, and also have that be in the same movie where the raptors get killed in the background while we're watching some guy take a leak in the foreground. I mean, again, that I think feel like that's sending a particular message to the audience, but it's also in universe sort of painting this weird picture of who Henry Loomis is supposed to be, unless we go forward with what I'm thinking for this potential rewrite of the movie. Now, this is where I explain what the missed opportunity was here. I think what the movie missed out on was the potential to make Henry Loomis the secondary human antagonist. You'll want your evil capitalist villain. All right, fine. We have a bunch of those in the movies anyway. And he can still have his motivation be entirely about greed and wanting to line his own pockets. And the fact that he wants to do it by making medicine is more of a rationalization than anything else. However, Loomis can easily be a secondary villain. Take those elements that we had before. He thinks it's a sin to kill a dinosaur. He views them in almost mythological terms. He has this speech about how he thinks that humanity is doomed. And in fact, he also has this weird moment where he says he wants to die in shallow water and be buried in silt because that's the best way to be fossilized. Again, like, kind of a weird thing for him to say. Yes, he's a paleontologist and all, but it's sort of in the way he says it, where everything he says kind of sounds like it's not quite right. If we take all of those elements and we combine them, we could potentially have seen Loomis go in a direction where he's slowly peeling back layers to reveal that he's not entirely on the level either. That he doesn't actually, like when he suggests that the samples not be given to the big company to make the medicine, he maybe pulls the open source thing just out of thin air to try and justify it, but that's actually not his motivation either in my alternative. Here we would eventually learn that he wants the samples because he wants to save the dinosaurs. He hates the fact that the dinosaurs spread all over the world and then started dying out and had to be limited to just this single band around the equator, which is the only place that can survive. As far as he's concerned, the world belongs to the dinosaurs. And he wants the samples not because he wants to make medicine, because, like we said, he thinks humanity is doomed. He actually wants the samples because he wants to modify their genetics so they can survive in the modern world. And he's picked the three biggest examples of each prehistoric species because, well, we could probably throw in something about how, because of their gargantuan size, they're a little easier to work with and study as opposed to a smaller species where you have to work around much smaller organs. Whatever the case, that's what he's picked. And he was kind of fed it's not that the medicine can't work, but it's not what he cares about. And once they're on the island and he's seeing the dinosaurs up close, I mean, to him, this is his paradise, right? And he's starting to think more and more that the dinosaurs really do need to be saved. They need to be prioritized, even if it means we don't get this medicine, even if it means that more people are going to die from a disease that he could have cured because he's prioritizing the dinosaurs. And hey, it's environmentalism, right? How can you object to that? But it would just be a rationalization for him, just like how making the medicine is a rationalization for Martin. But then we get to the center of the island in this rewrite, where we have the facility, and it's all been abandoned. It's in disrepair. The mutant dinosaurs, like the mutadons and the Distortus Rex, are prowling around here. And this is where Loomis starts to go off the deep end, because he gave that misanthropic speech about mankind being doomed, right? Well, here we are in what essentially equates to a post-apocalyptic landscape, overrun with mutants that were made by human intelligence. This is his vision of the future brought to life right before him. So now he's starting to think, I really cannot let that evil guy leave with the samples. Maybe I can't let anybody leave. Everyone else must stay here so they can see what mankind hath wrought. Meanwhile, I'll escape with the samples, and I can fulfill my mission. This can lead to a moment where Martin gets in the car and he's driving to the coast to get the boat. Loomis steals another car and chases after him, and they can have this chase going back and forth, trying to ram each other off the road into a ditch while avoiding dinosaurs getting in the way, and also have a few mutadons maybe try to go at him. And meanwhile, the mercenaries have all just decided, you know what? Nuts to both of those guys. We've got to get this family out of here because we have to do something, and that's just the right thing to do. We all have our pasts. We lost loved ones. We can't let that sort of thing happen again. So we get to the coast. Martin can get eaten, and the samples can fall to the side. And a fight can ensue where Loomis is trying to get away. Our mercs keep stopping him. And, you know, I haven't necessarily ironed out every detail here, but somehow things would play out so that Loomis gets separated from the samples, and the family with the mercs, and the Distortus starts chasing him back into the jungle. He runs, which allows our heroes to get away, and he falls off a cliff. But unlike in the Quetzalcoatlus scene, he doesn't land safely. He lands in a shallow river, which the impact kills him, and we slowly see his body start to be covered by silt, just like he wanted. That would be a sort of poetic way for this secondary villain to go out. Again, this is just something that popped into my head because as I was watching it, you know, a common thing you're going to see, even from people who like the movie, they don't necessarily feel like the human characters click the same way the casts from previous movies have. This would have at least made one of those human characters a little more interesting, even if it was by turning him into another villain. But hey, it's more than the movie did just on its own. So that was just a thought I had, I wanted to share it with the world and see what people think. And that's all I have to say for now. There any sort of alternative ways you would have handled the movie, or do you think it really is perfect the way it is? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to share them. Until such time, I've been speaking too long on this. I'm starting to slur my words. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. It's weird I messed that up. That's one of the things I say almost every time.